Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. We're going to go into this presentation called From Canaan to America, the migration of the Israelites. I want to say to the people who were under the understanding that I was going to do this presentation last week or sometime before that, I apologize for my tardiness and having to reschedule this. I want to give a Shabbat Shalom to the people in attendance. I want to say to the people who subscribe to the channel, I appreciate it. To the people who read the books, I appreciate it. We are going to, brothers and sisters, do this as a part 1 and a part 2. So let us continue in this presentation. Thank you for your time. Giving honor to the Creator of heaven and earth. This presentation is brought to you all by Yeshaya Yisrael, and honor on a human level to the house of Israel. Let us continue, brothers and sisters, in this. Is America the promised land of Canaan? A topic that some do promote. Now, we want to emphasize, as in the description, brothers and sisters, that America, and by that I mainly am talking about what is referred to as the United States, is not, brothers and sisters, the promised land that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was told about. If so, one will have to, brothers and sisters, show where Ur of Chaldees is in the Western Hemisphere. We spoke about this before on this particular channel. I want to give a shout out on a human level to the sister Sarah Michaela of the house of Judah, and to the brother the Royahu Ben Dora. Shalom to you, More. Now, what do we want to point out in this? If people are teaching that Jerusalem is in the state of today known as Utah, you're going to have to show where Rome was that attacked the Israelites. You're going to have to show, as we pointed out in the presentation called The Madness in Saying that the land of Israel is in the west, where is the way of the Philistines that is spoken of in the book of Exodus? So let's go on in this particular presentation, giving honor to the Creator. Let's look at this here. The people of Ham put Lehabites, Cush, the Red Sea, Canaan, Dedan. So you got Cush on either side, brothers and sisters, of the Red Sea. So with that being the case, where is Cush in the Western Hemisphere? That was the question that was asked before when we went over Ezekiel, the 29th chapter. You're not going to be able, unless I stand to be corrected, and I have stood to be corrected in the past, so be it. You can't be a more, a teacher, and refuse to stand to be corrected because you're just that, a more. You're not Tamim, perfect. You're not Billy Me'oma Leheraot. You're not without something to be shown to you. So be teachable. So I'm asking, according to this map that we see here, is it incorrect to show Cush on either side of the Red Sea, Mizraim being north of that? Last time we went over the aspect of the Mediterranean Sea. The Bible in 2 Kings speaks about Necho of Dynasty 26 of Egypt going through where the tribe of Judah was in order to try to go in what is referred to as the battle between the Babylonians and the Assyrians. Where, brothers and sisters, is the Babylonians and the Assyrians in the Western Hemisphere? Where, brothers and sisters, is the Philistines in the Western Hemisphere? Because the land that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was shown and brought to, and then later on, Moses was shown that land. And it said that Moses was able to see as far as where Dan was in the north. Where is Dan in America? So the biblical narrative, brothers and sisters, shows us something that some people are not able to explain, perhaps. Let's go on, if you will, to the next part. First Chronicles 1 and Amos 9. The sons of Ham. Ham is him, meaning warm or hot, right? Okay. Cush and Mizraim, Put and Canaan. Put can be said as Fut. Sometimes you may see it as P-U-T or P-H-U-T. Have you ever heard of the tribes in Africa referred to as the Futa Jalon, the Futa Toro? Could those people call those names be actually the people of Put that was in Eastern Africa and migrated west? Could be, as some say, that the Hausa people are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians? Could it be, as some say, that the Yoruba people is a mixture between the tribe of Joseph and the people of ancient Canaan? We may have to ask that, because the Phoenician people that Ezekiel 27 talks about speaks about the tribes of Israel doing business with the people of the Canaanites. Not playing salesman. In the book, brothers and sisters, From Assyria to America, part 1 and part 2, I touched upon that subject. And Mizraim begot Ludim and Anamim and Lehabim and Naphtuchim and Patrusim and Kasluhim. Whence came forth the Philistines and Kaphtorim? So let's look at this part right here, brothers and sisters. Right? And let's both part this right here and go back, if we will, right? And let's look at this slide here. Kaftor, inside the Mediterranean Sea, or Crete. We went over in another presentation in the book of Amos, is where it says, did I not bring the children of Israel up out of Egypt and the Philistines from Kaphtorim? Where is that in the West? To sit there and say that, brothers and sisters, this land here, America, namely the United States, that some people promote, is the land that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was promised for their descendants to be fruitful and multiply, and not what Jeremiah spoke about in Jeremiah 16, or what it talks about in Leviticus 26, or as we always say, Deuteronomy 28:68, to cite the rapper Killer Priest. Deuteronomy 28:68, it all relates. So be you like the brother Priest, who was a part of the Wu-Tang Clan. Be you like the Sons of Man group that was a part of the Wu-Tang Clan or brought out by them. Or be you the Israelites, so-called Messianic or so-called only Tanakh base, that all go to Deuteronomy 28. All Israelites got to go back to that book of Deuteronomy, which is part of the Torah. See, that's why I say so-called Tanakh based and so-called Messianic, because you can't prove you're an Israelite outside of the Torah. You got to have that foundation. All Israelites go to Deuteronomy 28. It talks about you being put out your land. It talks about the pestilence cleaving unto you. The pestilence, as I explained, brothers and sisters, in the book Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, not playing salesmen, are the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, the Ishmaelites, the Greeks, the Romans. That's the pestilence Deuteronomy 28, verse 21 is talking about, until you be consumed from the land, whether you go in to possess it. So, brothers and sisters, as it says in Deuteronomy 28, talking about the land that you go in to possess, where is that land in the West? See, biblically, when you're saying that America is the land of Canaan, which became the land of Israel, you're saying the whole Old Testament, especially the book of Joshua, is a lie. You understand? So these are things that we want to point out for edification purposes. Let's go in, if we will, to the next part. Thank you for the time. Numbers 34. We went over this part before, right? Command the children of Israel and say unto them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this shall be the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan according to the borders thereof. And for the western border, ye shall have the great sea for a border. This shall be your west border. Where is the great sea, brothers and sisters, in this map here of America? Because what you're seeing by the waters of modern day California, that's the Pacific Ocean. So if you're saying, brothers and sisters, that Utah is in Jerusalem, as some have stated, or some have stated, brothers and sisters, that Egypt is in America and Israel, the land, is in America, you totally forgot about Cush. Last time we went over the Egyptians, speaking about the Cushites. We spoke about the Cushites and the Egyptians. We took it out of, no disrespect intended to our book as Israel. We took it out of the scriptures and just talked about Ham for a moment, because our book talks about Hamites, quite often. Okay, so let us go, if we will, to the next part. Let's look at this here. Now, whether you're saying the earth is flat or the earth is round, that's not really saying the main point of this aspect. What we're looking at here on the left-hand side, brothers and sisters, as we went over before, the Jordan River, which they incorrectly like to call to the Dead Sea, which should be the live sea, all right? And things of that kind of nature, right? Now we see here on the right side, the Sinai Peninsula, and Egypt there shown with like the lights or whatever by the Nile, and the Nile goes north and dumps into what we see and understand as the Mediterranean Sea. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we want to emphasize and go over for edification purposes. All right? Any questions or comments, please feel free to put them inside the comment board. Again, much respect to the people commenting, the Rayahu Bendora and the sister Sarai Michaela of the house of Judah. Let us go on to the next slide. Toda Rabbah. Joppa and Jonah. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of Yah, and he went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Most High. Now, as we know, there's no running from the creator of heaven and earth. That's one thing to point out. So we have to know and understand you can't do the Jonah. Right? But look at where Joppa is. Where is Joppa in the Western Hemisphere? See, these questions have to sit there and be answered. Because we're going to have to find out geographically in the Bible, when is it talking about or emphasizing Tarshish? You read about Tarshish in Isaiah chapter 60. Do you know Isaiah 60 in part is the opposite of Deuteronomy 28? It says the ships of Tarshish shall come first. Did you know that when our captivity happened with what is understood and called as the Atlantic slave trade, that it was Spain where the first slave ship left from? You mean there were black people in Spain in 1440, 1441? Because that's when the first ship left. The first slave ship did not leave out of West Africa. It left from Spain. Spain and Portugal were one people at one time. So now Tarshish, according to Bible dictionaries, is Spain. So Jonah, which was after the timing of Solomon, which becomes important in Israelite history, because it says that Solomon from Ezion Geber, which is by the Sinai, again, you can't find that in America, by Ezion Geber, by the Sinai, he would have ships go for 3 years journey to Tarshish to pick up animals to bring back into Jerusalem for the zoo that Solomon had. You read that in the book of Kings. That's how you can see bears in the time of Elisha and Elijah, because bears are not indigenous to the land of Israel. So that just goes to show, brothers and sisters, that ancient Israel did commerce and trade with other nations. As these teachings go on, we want to present more and more information on this subject, because the nations have the crafty counsel and said, as one accord, let us cut off the name of Israel, that it be no more in remembrance. So we want to emphasize Yisrael Kai, Israel is alive. The word of Eloheinu, the word of our power, our God is alive. So brothers and sisters, if heaven above can be measured and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, then the Most High said that he would destroy or cast off the seed of Israel. No seed, notice, of Israel. Crack ain't do it. You got children walking around now already grown and their mothers were crackheads, born addicted to it. So crack in the hood didn't sit there and destroy us. Not to get too personal, I got an aunt that got AIDS. Her and her man. She takes her red clover. She takes her Suma, S-U-M-A, and her golden seal, cleanses her blood, promotes her immune system, and her T-cell count, according to the doctors, is higher. So AIDS didn't do it. Crack didn't do it. The average drug dealer now in the hood will tell you the things that they put in the community to try to destroy us did not work. You understand? So with that being the case, they have to now come up with something else. Let's sit there and have somebody who doesn't want to show their face whatsoever sit there and say the land of Israel's in the West. And then you got people who don't study maps, geography, history, read, no disrespect intended to anybody, been born in America, like in the original movie Roots that was brought out in 1977. See, Kunta's not like one of your niggas born here. He's freeborn. Most of us were born in America. Many of us don't have no passport. So the idea of flying and going somewhere is like, what? What's better than what I got here? I don't know how to survive nowhere else. I'm good here. My mom was here. My papa died here. What's wrong with America? See, that's the concept. So it's very, very interesting that, not to be long-winded on the subject, you notice, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody who teaches, from the guy who wrote the book, When Rocks Cry Out, among others who teach Israel the land also is in the Western Hemisphere, you got to look to things in the East and see it there and then say, oh, yeah, well, the original is here or is over here. It's as if your spirit is fighting with the lands of the East. We got the pyramid over here in Guatemala. The pyramids in Japan and the pyramids in Ethiopia, the people who had that are not at war with the pyramids in Egypt. It seems to be the people who want to promote this Western Hemisphere as older or better or original. They seem to be at war mentally with Africa. And sometimes some Israelites, sadly, have gone into that and joined forces with that and deal with a mistranslation. When you read corn in Genesis, the Hebrew word is grain. That's one of the things to point out. We pointed out before about the animals mentioned in the book of Joel, the caterpillar, and the other ones. Brothers and sisters, is not talking about the Western Hemisphere. You have to understand Joel chapter 1 and Nahum chapter 3, and line upon line and precept upon precept. Not you read one thing and then you go to Google Images. No, that's not study. I'm not knocking nobody's style of studying, but the book, it says 2 or 3 witnesses is a matter established. So you can't take one thing from one book itself, the Bible, and then go to Google Images and that be your second witness. The book itself is its own dictionary. So my suggestion is get a scripture here and there, get some linguistics up, get some maps together, learn some geography and maritime law where people do ships and sail, and then we can speak upon what Jonah did, because he went down to Joppa to go to Tarshish. So if you're saying that that is the West, where is Tarshish in the Pacific Ocean? Because the closest western water to what is called the United States is the Pacific Ocean. Where is Tarshish? Where is Kaftor that Amos spoke about? See the problem? Let's go on to the next slide. Josephus and Apocrypha. Japhet, the son of Noah, has 7 sons. They inhabited so that beginning at the mountains, Taurus and Amanus, they proceeded along Asia as far as the river Tansis and along Europe to Cadiz. So even if you're looking in Josephus, it mentions Cadiz is in Spain. We just pointed this out by looking at Cadiz of Andalusia. Andalusia was the name of the area when the black man, aka the Moors, led by Tariq in the 8th century AD, was doing their thing in there. So getting back to the point of this, when you speak, say, about Cadiz, right? That's in Spain. Tarshish is in Spain. So we can show with the map here, Joppa, Nineveh, where he was supposed to go, in Tarshish. Now, what happened, as we know? The sea began to become violent and Jonah was eventually thrown over. Right? Now, what happened with Biggie Smalls? May he rest in peace. Even the movie pointed out, he was supposed to go to England, to London. He wanted to go west when he was supposed to go east. Sadly, Biggie Smalls didn't make it back to New York in 1997. What am I pointing out by that? Be it Jonah getting swallowed up by the big fish or Biggie Smalls passing, if you're supposed to go somewhere, don't deviate from that. Let's learn from Jonah and take something, if I may say, black man, about this. Jonah, if you read in there, this is not to get sidetracked from geography, it's similar to what happens with black men in the Western Hemisphere. Everything gone crazy. Take what happened with, sadly, with Hurricane Katrina. Our people couldn't wait for the football game to start. Jonah, when the ship was in tumult because of the water being in tumult, should I say, it says Jonah went fast to sleep. That's our people. Give me something to entertain, not something to sit there and make me think. The black man, in many cases, is like Jonah, going the wrong way. And when things get crazy, if we will use that word, goes to sleep because he's chilling. We can't do the Jonah. The black man, for the lack of a better term of our brothers and males, right? Went to sleep. Biggie Smalls had a song called Party and something else. We gonna keep the language clean. Party and bump, party, and that was the name of the song, but we ain't gonna use those exact words. Those who know. We can't just party in that. So Jonah, right? He went the wrong direction. And guess what? Not trying to be funny, right? Jonah still had to go and do his mission after going the wrong way. You understand? Jonah still had to go and do his mission even after going the wrong way. So we could take that as black men and see that with us as well. We've gone the wrong way as brothers. And as we say, as Israelites on the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th month on Yom Kippur, right? As saying, we have gone astray and we have led astray. If brothers would respectfully put their foot down, not on the sister, but toward the sister, you need to cover your cleavage. No, that's not acceptable. We brothers already know what y'all sisters have. You don't have to advertise it. We promise you, sister, daughter of Dan, daughter of Judah, daughter of Levi, daughter of Israel, daughter of Isaac, daughter of Abraham. We already know what y'all women have. You don't have to wear tight things to sit there and cause it to be seen. You don't have to sit there and say, I'm going to make sure I look at myself in the mirror because I'm going to sit there and get these niggas becoming thirsty over me. You ain't got to do that. But in many cases, no disrespect intended, sisters do. And no, please don't take this the wrong way. And entertain men like Jonah who's going fast to sleep after going the wrong way. So he has to find his way. And if the sister is feeling him, she will follow him en route. But he has to know which way to go. You got to go north. You got to move up, baby. We can't keep on going to Tarshish where Spain is at. We can't keep running to the Spaniard. We can't keep running to the white man. Assyria was black. Tarshish is white. We can't do what Jonah did and run to the white man. We got to perhaps go to maybe some other black people to sit there and step up our game, as the saying goes. I know I'm using this as an analogy, but brothers and sisters, I hope it's understood. Don't do the Jonah. Don't go the wrong way, because you still afterwards still got to go back to Nineveh, Jonah, and still go the right way. Now, after you spent these days in the belly of the fish, you ready to now do what you were supposed to do in the first place? After you chose to go the wrong way, now that you realize your mission is still your mission, you ready to accomplish it? Okay, fish, spit them out. Now that you've seen, not I'm the most high, no. Now that you've seen my hand, now do what you got to do. Now that we have seen, brothers and sisters, them foot on and their knee on our neck, literally and figuratively. Now that we have seen, brothers and sisters, that George Bush Jr. had to give black people the right to vote again in 2006 or 2008, one of those years. We don't permanently have the right to vote in the United States. Every 50 or so years, they got to renew it. Can't you see the Most High separated us? Don't we know that Malcolm, as he pointed out over 50 years ago, if the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the Constitution, they can't make laws for us. We are talking on Facebook, for instance, right? Saying this. The Asians got a Bill of Rights about their violence and so forth, and we ain't get one yet. Ain't that what we're saying online? Stop Asian violence. And there's no stop the black man violence, because our rights come from Yah, not from Tarshish, not from England, not from baby America of the kingdoms that came up in Daniel 7 and the little horn that put 3 of them down. America is that little horn that wore out the saints of the Most High and spoke words against the Most High. We can't do the Jonah running to Spain / America. That ain't the move. We are talking about how a people in less than a year got their rights, and we're still talking about we ain't get ours, because our rights don't come from the Congress, it comes from Yah. Be you understand the holy name as Yahweh, Yahuwah, or Yahweh, or Yahweh, we're talking about he who created the heavens and the earth. That's who gives us our rights. He is the one who gave us our laws. Leviticus chapter 20 speaks of Israel as saying Israel is severed from the nations that Israel might belong to the Most High. So these nations, they're not going to give you no, quote, Bill of Rights set aside just for you, quote unquote, African American, West Indian, and so forth, because our rights, our Bill of Rights is the Torah. It's already on many of our grandmother's shelves. We just got to read the first 39 books in order to understand so-called Old Testament, if we will. So these are just things that we want to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. All right? So now getting back to this part of the presentation. The Holy Land ain't in the Western Hemisphere. Let's go on, if we will. Thank you. And shout out to the brother Zakai Ben Yisrael. Thank you for the comment, brother. Shabbat Shalom to you all as well. Okay, let's go on, if we will, to the next part. Lingual matters. All right, here we go. The matter of our men. We spoke about this before. Let's look at the left-hand side, right? This thing here is the flaxen reed making the I sound. This, what we see here, makes the MN. And this right here under it, looking like water up and down, is, brothers and sisters, the aspect of the end. And then what you see in here is the image of a male. Then you look at the Hebrew, you got from right to left, Amen. Now, where is the A inside of the Egyptian if they're saying that Amen comes from Egypt? It ain't there when you read the hieroglyphic. There's no A there. There's I there. So when you look at the pharaohs of Dynasty 12 and Dynasty 18, we're going to show what we're talking about for edification purposes. Ideograms. You got the open mouth R. Under that, the M, as in the owl. The P, as in, brothers and sisters, the square. And the N, with the line up and down, up and down. If you look and follow the arrow here, you see the M and the N. So let's go back, brothers and sisters, to slide 10. You see the rectangle with the line sticking up out of it? Let's look and see what that means in hieroglyphs. MN. Brothers and sisters, that doesn't say Amen in Egyptian. Let's move on and show what we're talking about. Because, see, this is part of them trying to cut off the name of Israel from remembrance. Oh, they put Amen in the Bible. That's why we got to get, as it says, our studying done. There's nothing wrong with studying. There's nothing wrong with researching things out. Let's go on, brothers and sisters, in this. Now, let's look, if we will, looking from the left side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see the M and the N again with a rectangular with the points coming up out of it? That becomes important, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. Now, all of this, brothers and sisters, that we see, for the most part, has the aspect of an Egyptian syllable that has 2-letter sounds. Some might call it binomials, if we will. So let's look at this next slide and continue. Understanding the basic of Egyptian. This vulture in Egyptian makes the A sound. We pointed this out on the channel here in the past. Back, if you go on this channel, right, and you can look up Baal, Elohim, and Amen explained, and that was done, the date being December 25th, or Friday, when they try to sit there and have the children of Israel break the commandments again by putting what's belonging outside, inside, where a tree cannot grow. See the backwards of the nations? Jeremiah 10 says the ways of the nations are brutish. You take a tree, you cut it from its roots. You know good and well you're supposed to leave it there so it could be, you breathe out, it breathes in and back. But you're brutish, like a brute, cutting that particular aspect off to put the tree inside your house. You can be inside and outside and survive. The tree cannot survive inside because you're cutting its roots. So bless the Most High. What I did, blessed be the Most High, that day when they was out there celebrating the aspect of Tannenbaum from the Germans with the Xmas, with Nimrod earlier before that. Talking about it's just for the kids. Brothers and sisters, do you know when children find out that there's no Santa, they upset? Do you know that it's disrespectful as a man, and I say there's no dishonor intended to my family, to break your back, working overtime, tired, taking sleeping pills, or in other cases, taking energy drinks and all of that to stay up because you want to sit there and give your children these gifts. And then sit there and say somebody else bought it. You don't want to give your children something and then hold it over their head. I did this for you, so now you may not want to do that. But why sit there and break your back to give another man the credit for what you did? See, that goes back to the Jonah going back to sleep fast. That goes back, and I say this in no disrespect, because I have loved ones and families that do, family members that do that. It's like the dog returning to its vomit. My mother found out that who they call Santa was not real. May she rest in peace. And was very upset with her brother. May he also rest in peace. And I say this in no dishonor to my mother. She was, to my knowledge, upset with her brother for telling her the truth. See how that can happen? She was 5 and found out that their parents, my grandparents, I'm not going to mention my mother's English name. There's like he's speaking to his younger sister. There's no Santa. I seen mommy and dad wrap the gifts up and put it under the tree. My mother said she looked at her brother and said, no, mommy said Santa did it. And he's telling her, you got this and I got this and I got this and you got that. So when the next day came, my mother said, you understand? And they opened the gifts and she realized that her brother was telling the truth. She was not happy with him, to my knowledge, for telling the truth. Ain't that what we do as a people? Give me something sweet. And I'm not knocking my mommy. She was 5, like I said at the time. It's like the saying that says, it's one thing for a child to be scared of the dark, but when you're an adult scared of the light, really? You still going to teach your children this? Really? And I'm not saying buy them something around that time and sit there and say and tell them the truth that you did it because it's still pagan. But when you put aside a day just to do something nice for Mother's Day, quote unquote, Father's Day, quote unquote, some people, quote unquote, conscious try to say, well, Xmas, we should just call it Children's Day. You're still celebrating that time. Let's make up your own day. Pick up a time, perhaps in what they call Black History Month. You know, like when us Israelites do Purim, and that's our gift giving time. Hint, hint. Okay, we can do our own thing, like we had our own Black Wall Street. We don't have to go back to Tarshish, baby. We ain't gotta do the Jonah going back to Tarshish when everything else is up in tumult. You understand? So, getting back to the point of this here, brothers and sisters, if we will, right? This is the A in Egyptian. You don't see that, brothers and sisters, in this Egyptian writing here. So, no, that is more so Einman or Inman, because the squiggly line underneath it, in between the image of the male and the image of the eye, as we see there, as we're going to point out here with the arrow, if you're looking at it, right? Right there, that's the N. So that's I-M-N-N. There's no A. There's no ah. There's no ah. There's no short A sound or long A sound in that. So somebody lied on Metuneta, even in the hieroglyphics, to try to just bash Israel. You lying on the Hamite people language at that point, trying to take a shot at the Hebrew. Because you thought we won't pick up something and read. Much give respect on the human level to the brother Zion Lakes. I've known him. Let me see. I'm what, 41? I first met that brother when I was, what, 14, 15 years old. That brother, to my knowledge, still teaches Egyptian classes, goes to the museum, takes people to the Metropolitan Museum and reads the hieroglyphics there and got respect in the Kemetic community for reading it. You don't think ancient Israel knew how to read Metuneta or the hieratic writing of Egypt or the demotic writing of Egypt, just like we read English and Spanish? I was in college. I never will forget this. I was in college. No, I was in high school, not even college. We went to a museum on a school trip and we saw other black people that were from another school. We thought majority of them had what you call dreads or locks. Majority of them, I'm not trying to play the Willie Lynch game. Majority of them were what you would call dark skin with long locks and dreads, as they were called. But when they spoke, Saudi, I'm like, what? And their instructor told us, oh, they're from Brazil. They hardly speak any English. They speak Portuguese. So we coming out of Brooklyn and Queens from our childhood, looking at these other classmates from another place, speaking Portuguese, and you looking like you come from Blake Avenue in Brooklyn. You look like you come from Webster or Jerome Avenue in the Bronx. You're looking like you're coming from Crenshaw in LA, but you're from Brazil. You're from Sao Paulo. You're from Paris. You're from Rio de Janeiro. See? Israel, when it was scattered. I was so surprised. The instructor said they can understand a little bit of English, but they mostly speak Portuguese. Black people with locks or dreads, as they were called or are called, majority brown and dark skin, who don't know how to speak English, but they're in the Western Hemisphere. And when we spoke among each other, they looked at us, and one of the people also looked like, those black people do know how to speak English. And so I took what the instructor said, that some of them know a little bit of it, being now in New York, but they go to a school where they speak Portuguese. I tell you, they look like All right, remember the rap group Das Effects? That's what they look like back in their day in the 1990s. They remember Dre and Scoob. I think that was their name, Das Effects. That's whom they look like with the locks and speaking no English. So I'm bringing all of that up to say that is a world out there that we may want to explore and take some info out of it. All right, let's go in, if you will, to the next slide. Thank you for that. This what you see here in Hebrew spells Yah. Hebrew always is read from right to left, right? So now, looking at it like that, you got the letter Yod, then you got the letter Hey. Yah, meaning the name of the Most High. Now let's look at this on how they try to be slick. Remember, this is the I in Egyptian. And brothers and sisters, right? What you're looking at here, they try to say is Yah in Egyptian, but that's not the Y, that's the I. That coral reed you see interlocking itself is the H. So this Ayah or Iya. It doesn't say Yah because the Y in Egyptian is the double flaxen reed, you know, that you see like on the Meneptah steel. So we just want to point that out in that particular case. All right, let's go on. Now, what did we just state? Let's look at the right-hand side. The owl, M, N, water, rectangle, P, Q, all right, open mouth, R, O, hill for Q, sorry. S, cloth, T, loaf, W, chick, like the baby bird, and then double Y for the reeds. But here you got reed on the left-hand side for I. So if you just even look at its alphabet, brothers and sisters, that does not spell Yah in Egyptian here. So somebody done lied again on the Egyptian language itself to try to take a shot at Israel. So we just want to present this for edification purposes. Let's go on. This is the word Yisrael. The lingual will be explained soon. All right. Now, let's look at this here. And I made this part of my Facebook profile pic. You see what's circled in the yellow there? And this is from the Danite steel, brothers and sisters. All right. You have the Yod, Sin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed. Now, brothers and sisters, there are 22 letters in Hebrew alphabet. All right. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right. The more so closer to pronunciation, if we will, is Yisrael. Not so much Yisrael with the S. So I want to do it like this. If you see this, don't trip out because originally it was always would have been shalom in Hebrew and not salom. But in Eastern languages, the shah, sh, and the s are interchangeable and hops back and forth. That's how, for instance, in Judges, you get Sheboles and Seboles in Judges chapter 12. So what we're looking at on the left-hand side is the Yod, the Sin, Resh, Aleph, and Lamed circle. This is dated to the 9th century BCE. What are you talking about? There's no Hebrew artifacts in history. Again, somebody didn't study. Let's go on. No disrespect intended. This is what they like to call Paleo Hebrew. The word Paleo, brothers and sisters, is a word that from the Greek that means ancient. That's what the word Paleo means, brothers and sisters. All right, so you have Aleph, Bet, Gemel, Dalet, Hey. Waw, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yo, Kaf. Lamet, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pe, Zade, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. Why did I show this particular PowerPoint, if we will? Is because it shows, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 10, there's 11 words on the top and 11 words on the bottom. So when you go to Psalms 119, all the Hebrew letters are there. So it was not, brothers and sisters, sheen and seen. It was just sheen. So if that being the case, we should understand that if we say Yisrael and not Yisrael, knowing good and well, brothers and sisters, that even in post Hebrew, in other words, Hebrew that existed after the biblical canon, the sheen and seen hold the same numerical value, 300. It means the exact same thing, tooth, as we see there, tooth, written in the English there. So those two letters are interchangeable. But the seen letter did not exist until the 12th century AD. And why? In due respect, because the Khazars cannot say Yisrael. So they had to say Yisrael. Ancient Israel didn't really have that problem. So that's what we want to point out. And the meaning is still the same as we see there. The meaning of the letter is still tooth. If I were to say shalom or salom, depends on how my phonetics is able to work, I'm still saying the same word. So let's move on in this particular case. All right. Again, showing this more clarified, right? The Yod, Shin, Resh, Aleph, and Lamed. Let's go on, if we will, to the next part. Israel, written in Egyptian, as we pointed out on this before. This is the double flaxen reed. All right. This is the S sound, as you see. This is the open mouth R, and this is the I. Do you see how they got the double flaxen reed, looking at it from the right going to the left? And then here is just one flaxen reed next to the bird, because one is Y and the other is I. Okay? So we want to point that out for reason and purposes. Then we have the bird with the A. Then we got the open mouth R. It's rare because in Egyptian, certainly before the era of the Ptolemies of Egypt, there was no L. We want to emphasize that. There was no L inside of Egyptian. So Ptolemy, when the Europeans brought the L letter to them, not that they brought the L letter into existence, but the L letter to the Egyptians, right? We want to point this out. Let's look at this carefully, if we will, right? Let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The lion, they try to say in many cases, is the L in Egyptian. But the lion in ancient Egyptian would have represented the RW, not the L. This is why we want to point these out for edification purposes and get our studying done, if we will. All right, and let's continue on with this. Again, giving a shout out to the people that are in the room. Thank you for that. All right, let's look at this here. Pictures of black people throughout the ancient world. Let's go on and close out. Black Egyptian, Black Hebrew. That's Nefertari. That's a picture that you see in that book called Before the Mayflower by LaRon Bennett Jr. What you're seeing on this side is a picture of the Israelites shown in the Europa, Dora Europos, and Moses and Aaron. That was a temple that was found in Syria of a black man and his brother leading in the Exodus in the Dora Europos. And you know where that land is? It's not in the west. It's in the east. But I think we already hashed that enough. Let's go on. Black Asiatics in Egypt. This is dated to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. All right. One of the things to point out as Israelites always talk about, where's your Zaquan? Where is your Zaquan? Zaquan means beard. All right. Zaquan means beard, and Zaquin means elder. You still got the Z, the Q, and the N sound. So in the slave ships, they used to cut your beard. They knew what they was doing. In jail, they offer brothers less time if they shave. In the corporate world, they'll tell you, clean your face up a little. Like they try to tell sisters, get a relaxer as if she's upset. They tell us brothers, you would sit there and, look more presentable if you clean your face up as if your hair is dirty. They tell you it looks cute. The Hebrew word for cute is nechmad. It comes from its initial root, kamad. Do you know what kamad means in Hebrew? To covet. That's against the laws of the Most High, to covet. You see how they speak words against the Most High and wear out the saints of the Most High? A man growing his zaquan or his beard is a part of puberty. Right? It's not an accident that you got your beard, brother. It's part of puberty. Well, you need to groom yourself, to make yourself look a certain way. No, what they want you to not do is look like that raw lion of Judah or the lion of Dan or the Gadite having faces like lions, as it says in the book of Chronicles. Because remember, Joseph was shaven before he went to Pharaoh. So when we read Egypt begin by ships, before you go and present yourself to their kings and leaders like to Pharaoh, groom yourself up a little bit, make yourself look neat, as if there's something wrong with what you went through at puberty, which is a normal thing for boys. This man is against what's natural. Let's go on to the next slide, brothers and sisters. All right. HYKSOS aspect, Canaan. The HYKSOS shown on the left side and a Canaanite shown on the right side. All right. No disrespect intended. That brother with your garments on, them some black people live. That's Canaan. Dug up in archaeology. That's Canaan. That's the people Joshua saw. Let's understand this. So in Genesis chapter 12, verse 6, when it says that when Abraham went to that land, that the Canaanite was in the land, they ain't do in Israel history like the European did with Columbus. Abraham did not discover the land of Canaan. Him and Canaan later on existed before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Israel coming into the Bible in Genesis 28 is not going to be where your story starts with Jacob and Leah, because you as Israel got roots going to another place, like Ezekiel tells you, the land of Chaldea, which is in the east, okay, as we pointed out. So now looking at this, where do you find in Genesis or in Joshua the stuff that the European Jews put in the Talmud about him lying? And therefore he got big lips. That's not Israelite teaching. When Jacob passed away, the Canaanites said that there's a great cry in the camp of the Egyptians in Genesis 50. Israelites been mistaken for Egyptians and other Hamites. For how long? We already spoke before about the Phoenicians being in part the tribe of Asher of Israel, the tribe of Zebulun of Israel, and Canaanites. They were the ancestors of whom we later on call Hasdrubal and later on his nephew Hannibal. Do you know what Hannibal means, brothers and sisters, if we get lingual? And it's not saying it's even the nicest meaning of Israel or in Israel. Hannibal is Kahane Baal. Kahan means priest. Baal was an idol that the Canaanites worship. So Hannibal is the English transliteration, but in the language, it's Kahane Baal. Baal was their idol, and sadly, Israel did worship Baal, like it says in Jeremiah. And let me not to offend anybody. Do you know Baal and Jesus have a connection as far as who they as their worship matters? Let me explain. Jesus rose up. They rose up there and looked at the tomb. Baal is said to rise up, and what they do is they look at the vegetation and say Baal is doing it. Every time of the season change. Moses passed away, and no disrespect. We're not looking for Moses to rise up. See, not to be offensive to anybody, what they did in replacement theology is take the authority that Yah has and take the position that the nation of Israel have and put it together in Mary's son named Yeshua and then said that he died. See, they were slick with that. And no disrespect intended. When the Philistines got the Ark of the Covenant, sadly, in the book of Samuel, when they gave the Ark back to Israel, they put their gods with it, brothers and sisters. When Israel's records was brought to Europe, being led by the children of Edom going into Rome, having been taught the culture of Israel, first by David, teaching the Edomites and them seeing it, and then secondly with John Hyrcanus, the nephew of Judas Maccabeus, the grandson, or John Hyrcanus, let me say, the grandson of Matithia Maccabee. Simon Maccabeus, if I remember that was his father correctly, was the father of John Hyrcanus. John Hyrcanus made the Idumeans or the Edomites come into the understanding of Israel. These same Idumeans, Edomites, teamed up with the Nabateans, who was the firstborn of Ishmael, who then teamed up with the people of Rome. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, when we read about Rome being Edom, it's not in lineal or genealogy, it's in political status. You are what your father is. So a lot of times Israelites say in broad general scope that the Edomite is the white man because the children of Japheth with Kittim mixed in and made in the league with one of the sons of Edom, but you still are what your father is. We always say that. And sometimes brothers try to misunderstand and abuse a misunderstanding of that, if we will. Right? Sisters, some brothers who always going around, you are what your father is, you are what your father is. Don't like sisters. You want to do the Jonah and get a Tarshish woman. And then still talk about you are what your father is. That's not bright. But let's go on, if you will, in this and close out, all right? Thank you again for the time. Again, I want to apologize for this presentation being postponed. HYKSOS aspect 2. Joseph had what's called Ketonet Pasim. You know what Pasim in Hebrew means? Stripes. So could the modern day dashiki be Joseph's coat of many colors? Because Ketonet is like shirt or coat, and Pasim means stripes. So I ask again, could the modern day dashiki resemble Joseph's coat of many colors? Just asking. Let's go on. Black Persians, Black Minoans. Went over that. Persia, Iran. Now, the Minoans from Europe, as you see there, were of color. Let's go on. Etruscans, Sumer, Iraq. The Etruscans was in the land of what you call Italy of today. Then we got Sumer in Iraq. Brothers and sisters, looking at that, what do we see? That's a person of color. Could that person of Iraq be the true Ishmaelite? It really can be. Or another descendant of Abraham. Let's go on, if we will. All righty. Indigenous autochthonous. How the Native Americans looked. Chief Straight Arrow. Montauk in Long Island. That man is my skin tone, brothers and sisters. So the Nez Piercy that they try to show, all looking like one person. The Sitting Bull that they try to show. What am I saying about the Native Americans and how they look? These Mongoloid ones that you see displaced the black man that was here before them. Before the image of what they call Sitting Bull, the original Choctaw were black people. The original Shoshone, and most definitely the original brothers and sisters, Seminole, were of black people, for the lack of a better term, using the term black. That guy you see there is on the internet talking about the Amityville horror. Let's go on, if you will, to the next part. How the natives looked that were in Mexico. Somebody tried to say they painted themselves that color regarding the sun. Really? They painted themselves brown and black because of the sun. When black and dark attracts heat, white man, stop lying. Stop it. You look silly saying that they painted themselves that because of the sun. When the sun, brothers and sisters, makes things hotter that's darker. Stop. Let's go on, if we will, to the next part, if we will. Egypt, Kush, Nubia. We spoke about Taharqa before on previous presentations. Just want to show the map here in the east. Alrighty, let's go on, if we will. Upper and Lower Egypt, again, dumping into the Mediterranean. Alexandria, Upper Egypt being southern Egypt, if we will. Nubia, aka Kush. Let's go on, if we will, to the next part. The Jahi Set UC peoples. Brothers and sisters, look at this guy here on the right side. I'm gonna have to ask this, because if you look at the underneath part, that's Philistine. The Philistines, then the sea peoples, were in the east. So let me ask this. You see this guy here with the feathers in his head and looking like that? Is that a big difference between this guy here and the Philistine that we see there in the picture? I'm going to show that again for the people. This guy here with the feathers in his head, like my skin tone, if you will, and brothers and sisters, this picture here that even this on internet is saying Philistine, also looking with feathers in his head. Migration was serious. Let's go on, brothers and sisters, if we will. Merneptah still. The princes are prostrate, saying mercy. Desolation is Tehanu. Hati is pacified. Plundered is the Canaan. Carried off is Ashkelon. Israel is laid waste. His seed is not. We went over this before, brothers and sisters. Canaan in Israel. Tehanu. You know what Tehanu is? Libya of today. Hati is the Hittites. That's all in the lands of the east. See, black people were original to the east and west lands. We are saying our people in particular come from an eastern people called the House of Israel. Tehanu, the Libyans, shown here, Dynasty 23, around the time of Red Amun of Egypt. And brothers and sisters, these are the Moors, Meshresh, who were part of the Sea Peoples, the Libu people, Libu. Ramses the third spoke about the Libu people in the land of the East. Um, don't take this the wrong way. I'm black. I know that sounded silly. I'm sorry. Let's continue and stay on course. Israelites. Even if you want to say, oh, that's a very light picture. The hair, brothers and sisters, that's a black man. My mommy was light skinned. My queen is light skinned. The same complexion that my mother was, and you see me on the YouTube here, is the same complexion of my queen, my lady. We can't do the Willie Lynch because if we look at the Willie Lynch letter, for instance, right, in 1712, let's look at it. It says whether they dark skin or light skin, whether they have coarse hair or fine hair. Fine means what they call straight. So black people were seen with straight hair, yeah, because the indigenous people that were here, they enslaved them too. So in the 1700s, there were black people, even when you read carefully the Willie Lynch letter, with today's term, quote unquote, so called good hair or long hair or straight hair, quote unquote good, and the people who had naps. Nappy hair is nothing but a curl that's tightened. Then we have here, brothers and sisters, as pointed out from the Sennacherib War of the tribe of Judah. Let's go on if we will and close out. Egypt and Byblos. Under the kings of Dynasty 12, Egypt once more became a highly organized, well-administered country with persecuted policies in respect to Nubia, Libya, and Western Asia. So if Egypt is here, Libya, Jordan, you know Jordan today still got a king? They still got a monarchy? Let's go on. All right, so I just want to show that. The Lachish matter, Assyria and the Israelites. Hebrews in captivity. Note the afro. Note what looks like, and I don't mean to be funny in saying this, afro puffs that sisters used to give brothers in the 1990s when he wanted his hair to grow. She would, I've been through it. The sisters would take the comb, have a bunch of rubber bands. Sometimes brothers used to use different color rubber bands, 1992, 1993, 1994. And she would take the grease in the comb and go and part his head and then put snap, put snap, put snap. And we believed, and I experienced it, your hair would grow faster with it being parted like that. Now, what's the difference between somebody like that and what you're seeing right there in that picture? And they were shown with their beards. America knows what they're trying to do with us. Let's go on if we will. Brothers and sisters, they want to attack us even physically, saying you don't look good unless you look according to their eyes. A sister died in her 30s. May she rest in peace. When they did an autopsy and opened her brain and her head, they showed the gook from the perm that went through her pores and it rested on her brain. I do not know what the lady passed from. May she rest in peace. She passed away in her 30s some years ago. They said with the perms that were being done, it goes through your pores. And one sister told me that, getting those perms can affect your womb to where you have birth defects. What? Perms can go into your brain and then go as far down past the esophagus, past the heart, past the breastbone, past the stomach, past the small intestine, and chill and hang out by your womb and uterus. Because I don't mean no disrespect. Pardon if there's any elders or children. They don't perm the hair downtown there. Don't disrespect. Sorry for going that far. But what I am saying is you're telling me that the perm on your head can sit there and give a baby birth defects. They know what they was doing. I remember my cousin, she did an expose in her own way. And then she took down her channel, right? If I could be heard, give me a one, right? She did an expose on how the prices of the perms went down and went down and went down. I am not knocking sisters who do perm their hair. Some of them are my loved ones. I am not perfect. I do shave my beard regarding the job in Babylon. I do wear mixed garments of polyester regarding the uniform with the job. This is why we want to get our own thing, where you don't have to wear the collar to make the dollar because the collar is straight European. Our garments, even being shown here and going into captivity, there were no collars, brothers and sisters. That's a European thing. As my teacher, Shalom Alau, peace be upon him, Morde Mishael, pointed out. That little horn and Daniel was something deep. Let's go on and close out, brothers and sisters. I wanted to show the picture even more close of how Judah was looked getting slain, brothers and sisters, by the Assyrians, as Isaiah 10 spoke of. Aramean Syrian, these are the indirect relatives of the Israelites through the line of Shem. See how they look? Let's go on. Kingdoms and empires in Western Asia and Europe, and we're going to close out soon. Babylon, after defeating the Assyrians in the 7th century BCE, Babylon came to power. Persia, after defeating Babylon, came to power. Greece, after defeating Darius III, came to power. Rome came to power after defeating Greece in 168 and then again in 146 BCE. All right, let's go on. Ethiopian Sea and Hebrews in Africa. See this map of Africa that dates back to the 1760s? It's called the Ethiopian Sea, aka today called the Atlantic Ocean. Let's go on. This is from a book that costs like a lot of money online. Judean Hebrews in Upper Senegal, West Africa. What? You mean they're Fulani? They Wolof? Look like the guys from South Central Cartel, from South Central, the rap group, if you ask me. Israel, we're going to come with our sources. Let's go on if we will, brothers and sisters. Strabo and Durant. Hebrews and Cyrene are in all cities, and it's hard to find from Egypt to Libya where the Hebrews were, and they have influenced others to their way of living. Why do I want to point out that others were influenced by the Israelites? Every person in Africa claiming Israel more than likely is not a direct descendant from one of the 12 tribes. Israel did make proselytes in Africa. All right, so we want to point that out. Will Durant stated by 70 AD, there were thousands of Jews, blacks by the way, in Seleucia, Tigris, and numerous in Arabia, and crossed thence into Ethiopia. We pointed this out before. And this here is part of the pictures. The left-hand side there showing the females of the Beta Israel, so-called Falashas, and on the right side, how they look as elders, as men. These are two different genders, two different age groups, but just want to show these are the young girls or brothers and sisters, and these brothers and sisters are the elders. If you notice, the girls don't wear, and I say this in no disrespect, a collar. That is European custom. You notice that they don't have their hair fried and permed, but now, being under the influence, going over to the Israeli state of Israel, they got the Beta Israel, so-called philosophers, smoking crack. That little horn that made war with the saints of the Most High. Let's go on, if we will, brothers and sisters, and close out, okay? Notes. Assyria took Israel in 721. I'm just going to leave this here, and you can read it on your own. At this point, you can pause the video when this is uploaded, and you can sit there and take these notes on for yourself. All right? The Romans speak on the Israelites. Many again say that they, the Jews, were a race of Ethiopian origin. They, Israel, abstained from swine's flesh. So the Greeks and the Romans, they've been trying to get us to eat pork for a long time, putting it under other ingredients of today. They do it with pork and sugar. This man is dangerous. It's not to promote racism. But when you got to sell something and put it under something else name, you're dangerous. I can't trust you almost as far as I can throw you. You dangerous for no reason. That's unnecessary. My lady is showing me things on Google like, brother, you need to stop drinking that because that has high fructose corn syrup. No, it don't. Look it up. You look everything else up in history. Look up this diet thing and see what's going on there. So no more vitamin waters. It is not sugar free. They lied to you. Let's go on. Because remember, they make war through the diet. Remember, the Greeks was saying, listen, elder of Israel, we'll give you clean meat, but the people are going to think it's unclean meat. So they can get Israel to eat the other white meat. They're dangerous. For you to just want someone to just eat pork, unlike some black people who say, well, if them Israelites don't eat it, there's more pork for me. No, 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 no. Make sure, like in the original roots, I got a good piece of pork fat for you. And Kunto hit Fiddler's spoon like, I'm not eating that. I'll eat this grits and fish. I have to understand that because I want to take out the time now and say Torah to the Most High for the sister in my life. My diet has changed. Eat this, take this, do this. And this is not to get too personal in a presentation, but nobody wants to start a relationship. And then you see black men dropping at 41, 42, 43. Fife Dog, the rapper, didn't make it to 50 years old. Gangstar did not make it to 50 years old. DMX did not make it, brothers and sisters, to 60 years old. They didn't die by the bullet or the gun. They died by having the diet and the stress of this captivity. So this is why we say, as the people in here said, Shabbat Shalom. Because dealing with this man in a toil and labor, and then they give you that fast food for your lunch, and then they say 66, you can retire. And if you retire early, you don't get everything that you worked for since you was 18, by the way. Then they upped it up to 72. Hopefully you die quicker, according to them. See, this man's a beast. Like it says, the ways of the nations are brutish. That's in Jeremiah 10. And let us close out, brothers and sisters. All right? For the people who are reading this, when this is up, you can pause it at this point and take the notes. Jeremiah and Isaiah. Thus saith Yah, stand ye in the ways and see, and act for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk therein. And ye shall find rest for your souls. But ye said, we will not walk therein. Thus saith Yah, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, Yah of hosts. I am the first, and I am the last. And beside me there is no Elohim. And who as I can proclaim? Let him declare it and set it in order for me. Says I, Yah, appointed the ancient people, and the things that are coming and shall come to pass, let them declare. Let the gods of these other nations proclaim as the Most High can proclaim. They can't. Exodus and Leviticus. Let's see the wisdom of the Torah when it goes on, brothers and sisters, and it says, seek ye out the old paths. Exodus chapter 20, verse 9, forbids laziness. Exodus 23, verse 2, forbids negative gains. Exodus 23, verse 11, forbids continuously working the earth. Exodus 23, verse 23:11 forbids continuously working the earth. Exodus 23:18 forbids witches. Exodus 21, verse 4 to 6 forbids breaking up workers' families. Exodus chapter 21, verse 12 forbids being a hitman. Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 forbids idolatry. Exodus chapter 20, verse 25 forbids thinking you can pervert the work of the Most High. Exodus 21, verse 24 to 25 forbids doing wrong and expecting peace. See, you can't, like, not trying to be funny if you talk R&B, until you go right, all you do is go wrong, like Lauryn Hill said. Exodus says forbids doing wrong and expecting peace. There's a rate for us to be. Exodus 22, verse 7 to 8 prevents scamming your neighbor and expecting to not make restitution. I ain't paying him back. Keep thinking like that, bro or sister. Leviticus 18:12 forbids adultery in Harlem one time. Men will kill over a woman. Nigga, didn't I tell you not to mess with my lady? One got locked up, the other one got death. Life and death. Nobody came out the winner. So she had nobody to admire her and no man because he killed the guy. Nobody came out the winner. She has nobody. One got life, one got death. Let's move on. Leviticus 18:19 forbids sex during female cycles. Leviticus 18:22 forbids homosexuality, including the down low. Brothers and sisters, Atlanta, DC, dudes on the DL, if you will, homo thugs, if you will. I worked in a hotel before, overnight. The dudes wanted one room for 6 people. In hotels, they're not going to do that. They mostly do mostly 4. Like idea, man, woman, son, daughter. That was your DL community going to the hotels to do their wickedness at night. I have, and this is not going to be the nicest or easiest thing to say. I have a cousin that's a straight flaming faggot. We don't really talk about him much in my fam. His moms don't even talk about him much. Like I got, she was showing me. She was like, I got these 4 children. I thought 5. No, he chose after 20 to still deal with men. That's not my son. She said that. My aunt said that. I didn't give birth to that. I don't know who that is. I don't claim him. He's grown and sleeping with married men. Flaming sodomite. Relative. Sleeping with married black men. And their wives don't know what's going on. The laws of the Most High do not condone and endorse that. Wickedness will be known and brought out. There's a lot of revealing to be done. When the guy wrote that book on the low, J.L. King, he got death threats, which showed that, like in the book of Kings, it says, and the Sodomites were then in the land under Rehoboam. And then later on, King Asa had to get rid of the faggots. And then later on, King Jehoshaphat had to get rid of the faggots. And then later on, Josiah had to get rid of them. So Dwayne Wade, Gabrielle Union, Jada Pickett, Will Smith, and Magic Johnson, and these sodomite sons that they given into the earth. New York had a sign on the train saying, I know my son deals with men, but I support him. That's wickedness. Hetero is the way to go. My mother told me something very, very deep one time. You show no sign and you're straight. Now, when my mother found a nasty letter I wrote, she went female beer on her cub. I was about 8 years old. She took the paw, the stick, the belt, the whatever, and said, I'd beat your behind like that when you wrote that to that girl because you were being disrespectful. You straight. You just got to make sure you go the right path. I'll never forget that. I'm there with lumps and whatnot and everything like that. It was like, you straight. Yeah, this is, you got ideas. But you ain't going to be giving this to nobody in the 3rd grade. Not my boy. When you get older, and I'm not trying, but sometimes when a mother is single, she got to be raw like that. No disrespect intended. The time for everything, son. I'm still crying. Like I said, I got whelps on my leg, a bump on my head, and shit. Here is now. There's a time for everything. When you get married, y'all do what y'all do. Now you go back in that bathroom and wash your face off because your eyes are still red. And so coming out of you understand, coming out of a situation like that, it was pretty raw. I gotta respect that now. You understand? You got parents nowadays, they scared to even sit there and pluck their child. You know what I'm saying? Oh, just let them just do anything. Somebody got to be sorry, the disciplinarian. Sometimes it's the dad, sometimes it's the mom, sometimes it's the grand. Somebody got to be that one said that's the one that's going to strike me as a child, so I'm gonna sit there and fall back. Somebody got to fill in that equation. But with mommy's mommy and daddy, it seems to be a little different when she has to sit there and do more than one role. See that little horn that spoke words against. You don't need him to sit there and help you raise that child. You're independent. You could be the mother and the father. What? You ain't gotta be there for the child. There's this child support. You can send it through Western Union, and you can do for the child that way. And New York City gets, I think, over 30 or 40 cents, if I remember right, for every dollar that goes into child support. So they're not thinking about your child. They're using your child to support them, just like the Moors pointed out. When you sign a birth certificate and they send you that social security thing with all capital letters, they are making you a property of the state. But let's go on and close out. All right. Leviticus 19:13 forbids being a con artist. Forget it. Leviticus 19:16 forbids slandering brothers and sisters. Leviticus 19:16 forbids withhelping help. Sorry. Leviticus 19:26 forbids eating blood of any kind. Leviticus 19:26 forbids the tarot cards and zodiac. Leviticus 19:28. What is your sign? Shabbat. I'm not a Pisces, not a Sagittarius. I'm not a Capricorn. I'm not a Taurus. My daughter, born in July, is not a Cancer. Don't call my princess a Cancer. She's not a Cancer. So we don't do that. What is your sign, Israel? Shabbat's our sign. It shall be a sign between us and our Maker. And that's how the people we talked about earlier, the so-called philosophers, the Portuguese said they keep in biblical days. When they were interviewed or shown in 1670, and this is now 2021, the Portuguese reported back to Europe. There's a group of black people in Ethiopia keeping the Shabbat. How? Because that's their sign. How you an Israelite saying we ain't got no Shabbat? Huh? My lady and I was just talking about the understanding and how Shabbat works in unison. You know how much of a blessing it is to have a woman in your life that you can sit there and talk about the Shabbat with? And I hope I'll be a blessing to her life and I can sit there and talk about the Shabbat with. Shabbat means to discontinue or to cease. Like in basketball, when you're dribbling the ball and then you stop and you dribble again, that's discontinue. You discontinue from the other stuff out there. Try not to sit there and bring that energy into Shabbat. Try not to. You don't want to upset somebody else's Shabbat observance. You ain't getting no blessing for that. You got the mind of a slave master characters on Facebook. Whoa, you ain't bring here's the thing. You ain't bring no orphan on Shabbat, so you can't keep it. Let's break this down real quick, right before we close out. And I thank the people for the time for listening in and also commenting. The offering on Shabbat, did you know what it is? In Numbers chapter 28, is 4 lambs. Because you got the evening one, you got the morning one, or the morning one and the evening one. That's 2. And on Shabbat, there's 2, so there's 4. That's in Numbers 28. That is a lamb. Do you know that not every family can and not every person can afford a lamb in Israel? So the people who say, well, you don't bring no offering on Shabbat, they are under the impression that as David counted Israel and it numbered over 70,000 Israelites in a census, you mean to tell me that every single Israelite 70,000 is going to bring four lambs up to Jerusalem every Shabbat when the Levites don't even number outside of 6,000. The Levites, especially the specific sons of Aaron, they don't number in the millions. Israel at large will number in the millions. But the Levites are the smallest tribe. So you think that every Israelite, including the tribes on the east side of the Jordan, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, came every Shabbat with two lambs. When it says on Passover, if your household be too small for a lamb, then you shall share it with your neighbor next to you. Your neighbor next to you more than likely couldn't even afford a lamb. So it's about sharing, like sharing is caring. So just admit it. You think she looked good and you want to take her out on Shabbat. That overtime with the union, getting triple pay, looks good on quote Saturday. That's why people do it. Money and women is why men teach that we cannot keep Shabbat. There is no deeper reason about it because you're not going to be able to go into Numbers, the 28th chapter, misunderstanding Numbers 18 because it says the free will offering in Numbers 18 that Israel gives to the priests is for them. So they will only offer four lambs on every Shabbat. You cannot sit there and take over 70,000 Israelites' offerings on one day. Just admit it. You don't want to keep Shabbat. And you got the mind of a slave master. So you want to go in people's inboxes and upset their timing on Shabbat. And this is why Shabbat, if you prefix it with a mem, mashbat, block, cessation. Bye-bye. People's parents died in this understanding. The new generation that's coming up, trying to sit there and teach that we can't keep Shabbat, you got to miss us with that one. You got to miss the new generation saying of Israel that is not going to sit there and teach that we can't keep the Shabbat. It's part of the Ten Commandments. Just admit it. You want to go out on Saturday. Let's go on. Leviticus 5 forbids not being a snitch. Snitching is Torah. Leviticus 11 verse 7 forbids eating pork. Leviticus 19:11 forbids lying to your people. Leviticus 19:11 forbids stealing. Leviticus 18:19 forbids intimate relationships with a woman and her sister while they are alive. You cannot marry a woman and her sister. That's not going to work. Let's go on and close out, brothers and sisters, with part one of this. Leviticus to Deuteronomy. Leviticus 25 prevents not helping your brother in need. Deuteronomy 24, verse 5 forbids abandoning your wife. Deuteronomy 11:19 forbids being a deadbeat parent. Deuteronomy 23:18 forbids being a pimp. Deuteronomy 23, verse 15 forbids returning slaves. Deuteronomy 21, verse 1 through 3 forbids finders, keepers, losers, reapers. Deuteronomy 22, verse 5 forbids drag queens and coarse dressing. Deuteronomy 22:18 to 28 through 29 forbids just getting sex from a virgin and being on your way as if nothing happened. There's a culture in Israel. Deuteronomy 21, verse 18 to 21 forbids being the original 50 from Brooklyn in existence. I remember being in college. Oh, the Bible, and it talks about, in part, if a child is bad, you kill the child. You ever had that kind of conversation? Oh, why will it say that? First off, it's the parents that bring that child up. You seen Scarface? Remember when the mother said, him no good, Gina. He no good. I run an anti-Castro movement. Well, what you do? Stick your gun in the face? The mother, she knew her child. She knew what Tony Montana was about. You understand? So the original 50 Cent from Brooklyn was a murderer who, when he passed away, people was like, Nope. He brought it on himself because of what the stuff he was doing. So I remember being in college, right? And there was these dudes talking like anti-Bible or anti-scriptures, right? Oh, well, you do that to a child. And they were white guys. I said it will prevent a Sammy the Bull who killed 19 white fathers, 19 white sons. It will prevent a John Gotti who told Sammy the Bull to go and kill his white brother. Class, quiet. Let's go on. All right? Deuteronomy 15:7-8 prevents being greedy when your brother is in need. Deuteronomy 15:10 prevents having a spirit of thinking you're losing by helping. Yo, if I help him, I ain't got that. Don't think like that, Israel. Deuteronomy 18, verse 11 forbids dealing with those who cast spells, conjure up the dead, psychics, and witches. Israelites who came to the understanding of Israel, and I say this in no disrespect from some places, i.e., example like Haiti, talk about how the spirits go into the fruit and the fruit starts to talk, and the spirits go into the animals and the animals start to talk. So when we deal with, say, like Balaam and closing this out, the witch Balaam, who was hired by Balak to curse Israel, you best believe that they still got witches that are hired to try to curse Israel. And closing out, don't run to Tarshish, run to the creator of heaven and earth. Nobody's perfect, and let us support and love one another. Giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. I can be reached at 908-587-4841. Again, 908-587-4841. To the people who supported the channel, I appreciate it. There's going to be a part two. Stay tuned. I don't want to give a date when I'm going to do the rest of the slides on this presentation because this one is already 2 times delayed. And I apologize to the people who were going to watch it before but was unable to because I had to postpone it. Thank you again for understanding. Shalom, Most High bless.